Hi, scientists. Today we are going to be learning what is science. So let's think. Golly, we've already learned a lot. We've done several things already this year. We have been learning what good scientists do. We have been learning about how to stay safe. We've learned the type of tools that scientists use. We have learned about our 5 senses and how scientists use those every day they work. We have been asking questions by observing our hand. And don't forget, by observing that ice balloon, we learned the type of questions that a scientist asks. So we've been super busy. But today, we're going to move on to what is science? So for today, our learning target is what science is. Today, we'll learn what science is so that I can understand how a scientist works. I will know I've got it when I can explain 4 things a scientist does when studying the natural world. So let's get started. What is science? So let's think for a minute. What is science? Maybe you think about nature. Maybe you're thinking, when I look outside, that's science. Maybe when you build something, you think, I was an engineer when I built that. That's what science is. Maybe when you see an animal, you think, well, that's science. If you've ever done an experiment with your kindergarten or first grade teacher, Miss Roy or Miss Kendall, you're probably thinking, well, that was science. And did you know that science is everywhere? And most of the time, it's everything we do. That's what science is. So today, we are going to go to Generation Genius, and it's a really cool site. I'm going to get you started and show you how to get there. But today, as you watch the video, I'm going to want you to stop it. So you're going to notice right here it says, to watch the Generation Genius lesson, what is science? And you're going to click this, and we'll click this in just a minute. But I'm going to stop the video at 11 minutes and 17 seconds. And then I got to fast forward to 12 minutes and 53 seconds, and then finish the video. We're going to skip over the DIY part. That's because tomorrow we're going to do the DIY part. So that's why I'm not having you watch it today. But as you watch, here's what I want you to think about. How do scientists work? So let me show you how to get to the site. You're just going to click this link, and it's going to take you straight to the Generation Genius site. Now, I think Miss Kendall used it some last year, but just in case you don't remember, you will then just click this button, and then that's going to get you started on the video. And when you click, it will
I'm
get
Dr.
you started.
Jeff. I'm Izzy.
I'm Zoe.
I'm Bert. Remember, always question, always wonder.
Okay, so maybe you remember them from last year. So that's the site we're going to be at today. So let's go back and let's review really quick before you start watching when I want you to start, or where I want you to stop and start. So I'm going to want you to stop it at 11 minutes and 17 seconds, and then skip forward, and at 12 minutes and 53 seconds, finish the video. DIY will be tomorrow. So go watch the video. Now that you've watched the video, let's talk about science. What is science? Remember, that's our question for today. What is science? Science is the process of learning about the natural world through observation. That's how we look with our eyes. We use our senses. And experimentation. Experimenting, one of my favorites. So in the video, and if you haven't watched the video, go back and watch it. We're going to talk about how does a person start doing science, and what does it mean to be a scientist? So you might remember that on the video we learned that science starts when a person is curious. curious. That's when we're wondering about something and that's in the world around them. They start asking questions about ways that we can figure out what's going on in the world. Maybe we do an experiment or an investigation. Those are the same things, experiment or investigation. If we do an experiment or investigate something, we'll keep track of our data. And then you might remember in the video that we talked about 8 science and engineering practices. Also, we've got the question, what does it mean to be a scientist? So think back to the video. What did it mean to be a scientist? And as we're talking about these questions, just grab your notebook and you can jot down your ideas. How does a person start doing science? And what does it mean to be a scientist? Remember, this is your working notebook. So anytime that you're thinking, you can write it down. Scientists do not always have to use sentences. They can just jot down their ideas. So what does it mean to be a scientist? Well, being a scientist always starts with you're wondering about something. And then maybe you do some research. Think back to my cicada and how I was wondering about that cicada. And I went and looked up some information. Maybe you test something, you experiment, you observe, you take your magnifier and you look at something. That's being a scientist. If you use math as you're working, that's being a scientist too. All those 8 science and engineering practices is being a scientist. Do you communicate with other people and tell them what you find and what you figure out? Well, sure. That's part of being a scientist too. So let's look over those science and engineering practices. Once again, in my science notebook, I want you to jot down your ideas. So at the bottom, and it's kind of a little bit hard to see, let me give it a second to come back on the screen. In your science notebook, I want you to write down your ideas about how Dr. Jeff, Izzy, and Zoe used each science and engineering practice in the light demonstration. So you might remember in the video that they were testing out different types of light. Our first one says, scientists ask questions and define problems. I can wonder about the world and write it as a question. So if there's something we're wondering about, we can write it down as a question. We also develop and use models. I can create ways to model real-world situations. Maybe I'm never going to get to go see a spaceship, but could I make one? Sure you could. Or a robot. You can make a small version. In 4th grade, we'll make a volcano. We can't go to a volcano, but can we make a model of one? We sure can. Plan and carry out investigations. These 2 little girls look like they've got a pitcher of water and a funnel and maybe like a measuring cup, and they're investigating something. I can understand and explain what data means by analyzing and interpreting my data. I can use math strategies, won't Miss K be happy with us, to explain my thinking. So we use mathematics and computational thinking. Maybe we need to use a calculator one day. Maybe we just need to get a piece of paper and add something or subtract something. We're going to use a tape measure. We're going to use rulers. We're going to use meter sticks. All of that is math. We construct explanations and design solutions. We come up with ways to make something happen, a solution. There's a problem, and we give a solution, and we try to figure it out. And then we explain why. We engage in argument from evidence. Now, argument doesn't mean like I might argue with a friend over something, or my brother or sister about who gets to sit by the window or who gets to go to somebody's house. That's not how we argue in science. In science, we just argue based on our evidence. So we just prove to somebody what is happening And we argue that, but we give our evidence. We don't yell at somebody. We don't scream at somebody like we might think when we say we're arguing about something. We give proof with our evidence. And then also, we obtain, evaluate, and communicate information. I can collect, understand, and show or share my information. So what that means is, you can see this boy in the picture is telling these other scientists what he found out and showing them all of his proof and evidence. Now think back to our video and just jot down real quick in your science notebook just a couple of things, how you remember Dr. Jeff, Izzy, or Zoe using the science and engineering practices in the light demonstration. Jot down those ideas. And if you need to pause, just pause the video. Now, what am I going to do today on my own? What's going to be my independent practice? Well, we already know that scientists have to learn more information by researching. So today, we are going to go back to Generation Genius. So I'm just going to click here. And earlier when you clicked for the Generation Genius video, you can click the same place. I'm clicking here so I can show you. Whoops, hold on a second. Let me go back. It didn't click right. There we go. Sorry about that. So on Generation Genius, you guys have already watched the video. If you come down, you're going to see something that says reading material. Okay? What I'm going to want you to do is click reading material. And then you're going to see this. Okay? This is what I want you to read today. We're going to read about what is science. Okay? What is science? What's the definition? We're going to read and learn more about those science and engineering practices. How do scientists collect evidence and proof? Do scientists really need to be able to change their mind based on new evidence? Yes, we learned that in the video. Many things around us appear to be science, but they are not. We want to learn more about that. And then we've got some science examples that we're going to learn about. And even some vocabulary words. Now, I wanted to share this with you. When you click this, it's like playing with cards. So check that out. And then even some questions to think about. Now, you do not need to write these down, just some things to think about. But if you will just make sure you read this information up here and flip the cards, don't worry today about the questions. We've already talked about a couple of them. And then we might talk about them during our Google Meet. Okay, so let's go back so I can show you how to find that again. It's going to be right here on the same page that you watched the video. Just slide down. Reading material. Click that button and there it is. Okay, now let's go back over here to our lesson. So that's what we're going to do on our own. That's our independent practice. So pause the video so you can do that. Now that we've read that on our own, in our science notebook again, I want you to just write down 4 things a scientist does when studying the natural world. So just grab your notebook. If you already had wrote some things earlier, just draw a line. If you need to go to the back page, go to the back page. But write down 4 things a scientist does when studying the natural world. So the natural world means the world around us. What are 4 things a scientist does? Just 4. And then when we get to our Google Meet, I'm going to ask you to share one of the 4 things. Okay? So be prepared to share just one. You don't have to share all 4, but share one of those things you wrote down today. Now, what about our assessment today? So when we were on the Generation Genius webpage, you might have noticed at the very bottom that there's a game. So I'm going to Go back to that site again, same place we were earlier. That's in your Google Classroom assignment. When you look right here, we've already been to the reading material. Now there's an online quiz game, okay? So when you click that, just play the one that's for yourself. Play individually, okay? Individually, we're gonna play that one. You'll click that button, and this is what it's gonna show you, quiz. And you're just gonna start, okay? There are some flashcards if you want to quiz yourself with the words, but then once you click start, you're going to be in the middle of a game and see if you can win by answering the questions, okay? And then don't forget, when we get to the Google Meet, here's what we're going to do. You're going to share with me one thing a scientist does when studying the natural world, okay? So I will see you at the Google Meet.